Hello everyone. Bonjour à tout le monde. Assalamu alaikum wa marhaba. Welcome to this interview for the Open Borders Institute. We are a small advocacy with the goal of changing perspectives on cross-border exchanges. This week, we welcome Shahin Vallée.
On the articles which you published in the Grand Continent, I wanted to focus more on your articles around Rwanda. I saw that you did an interview of a French colonel which fought in Rwanda. You published your piece, which sort of was an analysis of the report, and it was quite harsh in regards to the responsibility of the French state, rightly so. And I've been wondering, how do you consider now? I mean, it's been a year and a half since the report was published. How do you consider now the developments of France's policy towards the issue in the last year and a half? Did Macron do enough in regards to his memorial policy since the report was published?
So yeah, maybe for those who don't know, you're referring to the Rapport Duclerc, which had been ordered by President Macron, which was basically tasked with going through archives that had been kept secret for a long time. And Duclerc chaired a commission of historians that went through these archives and proposed an assessment of France's responsibilities in the genocide in 1994. And I think the report was actually a very good report, very thorough, not absolutely comprehensive, but at least as comprehensive I think you could expect such an exercise to be. What I think matters more than the report and its conclusions is the use that political leaders make of this report. And where I was disappointed is that President Macron decided to make, an admission of responsibility in some aspects of the genocide, but refused to make an apology.
In the UK, there's been kind of a race to the bottom in terms of pushing forward for right-leaning policies. We've seen what's happened with Kwarteng's mini budget, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who's released the mini budget, and the result of that with the instability economically. What's your view on that? There is an article by the Financial Times that is assessing that so far the Conservative government in the UK has the most rightward-leaning economic policies in any country in the developed world, to the right of the Republican Party in the US, even under Donald Trump. What's your perspective on what's happening in the UK?
Yeah, I'm highly skeptical that this sort of Thatcherite shock therapy for the UK is going to deliver any good to the British economy and to the British people. So I find it very sad to see what's unfolding in the UK. For rightly or wrongly, financial markets seem to be equally displeased with this, and so that financial market sanction might come to force the British government into modification of this fiscal plan. As you've seen, the Bank of England has intervened to stabilize the British gilt market, but the commitment by the Bank of England is a very short commitment. The plan is meant to expire on October 14th, essentially giving 2 weeks to the British government, to Her Majesty's government, I should say, to correct course, and we'll see if the Chancellor and the Prime Minister are both in that mindset or not. If they're not, I worry that things could get a lot worse. So I hope that the time that the Bank of England has bought to the government will be used wisely.
Do you think that this is a chance for Europe to shine through, for instance, the stability that it brings to prices in the different countries of the European community? Do you think that this is an opportunity?
Not in the short term. I don't think, this is an opportunity in the short term, but I do think and I do hope that, if the economic situation in the UK continues to deteriorate, a new British government after the general election of 2024 would make the case for a new relationship with the EU. I don't think the UK will come back to the EU so soon, although I think it might, in the next generation. And so, I don't believe that there are short-term gains to compare what's happening in Europe to what's happening in the UK. What matters will be the long term. I think in 5 years' time and 10 years' time, if the British people sees that the income per capita in the UK has grown a lot less than it has in continental Europe, that might be a moment of reckoning.
Were you surprised that Liz Truss said that she would be attending the European Political Community Summit in Prague? What's your view on that? I have to say, it's an idea that President Macron has promoted, and I was actually quite happy with such an idea. What is your view on that?
So I wrote a quite long piece about what the European political community could be, and so I see it as a potentially very important device, both to overcome the challenges linked to Europe's enlargement, which is probably too slow given Europe's need for geopolitical expansion. And I also think it's a potential stepping stone for accelerating Europe's deepening. And by that, I mean treaty reforms, changes of the governance, changings of the voting rules, such that qualified majority voting decisions are expanded across the EU. So I think the European political community is potentially a very useful device. And it could be a very useful device, lastly, to organize the relationship between the EU and between member states that have no desire to be part of the EU. And that's the case of Norway, for instance, but that's also the case of the UK, of course, and it could also potentially be the case of Turkey. I was afraid that the British government, or at least this British government, would refuse to take part. To some extent, I think that the crisis that took place following the mini budget announcement has probably contributed to the British Prime Minister deciding to come to the Prague meeting. I think, given the weakness at home, being part of a global meeting and solidifying relationships with the continent could only help at this point. I think antagonizing financial markets as well as antagonizing European partners were probably something this government could avoid at this point. So I think that played a role. I think the big question is how constructive the British government will be, and whether this EPC will turn into the device that I describe, or whether it will just be a red carpet opportunity with limited policy and political substance. I think that remains to be seen next week, actually.